box is also open. There we go, got it. Also, I just want to remind folks, if you have questions, what I'll do is I'll pause every couple of slides and answer 1 or 2 short questions. There'll also be a Q&A at the end that I can help assist with. Sorry, I'm slightly frazzled because we have a storm here, power issues, something happened with my computer and knocked out my microphone, so I'm on the phone with the computer. So bear with me. Technology is fantastic when it works. All right, so let me get back at it. A quick definition of what are invasive species. They are non-native species that have the potential to cause harm to the environment, economy, and human health. Invasive species are unique in that they do not have any controls in our environment to keep their populations from expanding rapidly. And there are no controls where animals or insects will eat them. And the end result is that they are kind of able to thrive in certain environments that are detrimental to our native plants. They did not evolve on this continent. And so their hosts and their predators aren't here to keep them in check, unlike our native species. Real quick from left to right, I'll just do quick highlights of pictures. This is Hemlock woolly adelgid, the little white woolly sacks. This is a insect from the Pacific Rim that is attacking our hemlock trees. Here is a plant called Mile a Minute, which we have treated in the upper Hudson. It can grow 6-7 inches a day. Left unchecked, it gets out of control. If I could see everyone, I would love to see a hand. Like, how many of you have heard of the spotted lanternfly? Just with a quick raise your hand, that's always neat to see. Yep, good. So the message is getting out there. And this is a new invader. We have beech leaf disease, which I was actually looking for today, which is a threat to our beech trees, which is a really important producer for hardmaster acorns for bears and animals of the such. All right. Invasive species in general cause a reduction in biodiversity and habitat degradation. They are the second most common reason for the loss of species on our planet. And you guys all know who number 1 is. That would be humans. From basically when we're talking about when we build infrastructure, homes, we're the number 1 cause for habitat destruction and fragmentation of our landscape. That's pushing species into extinction. But invasive species are the second cause right behind us. They decrease recreational opportunities. They also have a large income impact, economic impact on recreational opportunities. Think of like the aquatic environment, you know, when marinas and docks are shut down because of the aquatic invasive species. And also they play a large role in our food supply. So those are serious concerns. And of course, there's our forest health in our forest industry. There's a huge economic, I think it's an $18 billion industry in New York State. And of course, also there's livestock complications with invasive species. So this number is really old and outdated. It's from like 2005, but in the United States, there's roughly $120 billion spent every year on education, outreach, prevention, early detection, and control of invasive species. And again, all of those realms from recreational, forest health, agricultural, and just even in our own nature and protecting our ecologically significant environments. Oak wilt, it's a disease from a fungal infection from bugs that travels very quickly, has the potential to kill an oak tree in 6 weeks. You know, these are things that we look for if we get reports from. They are acted on immediately, especially with the DEC. Lessons learned, the emerald ash borer. This is an ash tree. This gentleman is injecting an insecticide to prevent the death of this tree. Emerald ash borer is basically eradicating our ash trees from our environment. That is directly caused by the movement of firewood from infested pallets that came from shipping, and then people that basically move the tree around and spread it all throughout the United States. There are programs underway, a message of hope. Today I was collecting ash leaf samples for genetic studies to produce a hybrid for the future. These programs do work, they take time. You know, there's the Darling 58, which is the American chestnut tree, which is now a genetic breed, which will be released to the public in the next 5 years. It's currently being ready to be loaded up into specific agencies to get it out and to get it started, but it'll eventually be commercially available for resale. On the far right, that is the southern pine beetle, the orange pine tree that you're seeing. That's what happens when the southern pine beetle takes off. That's a picture from Long Island, I think. We do have southern pine beetle in New York State and Minnewaska State Park. I know we have it up here in Warren County, but it's native to the United States from the south. It's invasive up here because it doesn't have its controls. And of course, this is an instar on the upper right for spotted lanternfly, and you got the Asian longhorn beetle. So that's just a quick show and tell. Like, management of these problems, it's very expensive. And one of the key takeaways today is if you learn your forest pests, you can report them so they can be taken very quickly and taken care of in low populations, which are minuscule treatments, as opposed to something that's left unchecked that gets in like that picture in the lower right. Some definitions for you folks. Non-native species are indigenous to the region at the time of European settlement. Okay? Non-native species can be exotic, like if you let an alligator go in the Hudson River. They're introduced, they're alien species, but they're not necessarily capable of being invasive because they're not going to survive or thrive in our climate or reproduce in large numbers or cause, local populations of natives to crash. Then we have weeds. I'm going to guess a lot of you are gardeners. We do have weeds in our gardens. We're basically providing a clean slate where the soil is exposed and where any type of native plant in the environment can produce seed. And it's like, oh, look at this, fresh soil. And, so we get these, weeds that grow in our gardens. And a lot of times there are natives that have actual value and function, ecological function, but we tend to call them weeds. They're nuisance to us. Sometimes they're invasives in our gardens. But that's something to keep in mind that plays a role when you expose the soil. You're providing opportunity for invasives to move in. And that's why when you plant your gardens and you get the ornamentals that you might purchase or the native wildflowers that you put in, the fuller they get, the less opportunity for invasives to take up that real estate. So that's also a lesson I'm going to take away today. Ornamental species are one of our problems. We know where invasive species come from. We have been able to identify invasive species. They are basically in the ornamental trade. Lessons from the past, honeysuckles, autumn olive. These are things that were sold in soil and water conservation districts and pushed through tree and plant sales back in the 50s. People didn't know they grew fast. They're like, great, this will, cover up the soil, protect the soil. But, with time, then they realized, okay, these plants are escaping, they're being naturalized in the environment, and then they showed invasive properties. So those are lessons learned from the past. There's some wonderful studies out there. Many of the invasives are coming from the ornamental industry, when you go to your landscaping and you go into the nurseries and you're buying commercial stock, that's where they're coming from. We've actually done a lot of assessments. We know what plants are invasive, but they're still being sold. Not just, New York has some prohibited and regulated species we'll talk about, but the internet, people purchase stuff on the internet. There are other states that don't have regulations. And so we know where they're coming from. And the other thing is I'm trying to encourage people from, think native. Ornamentals are fine, they have their place, and not all ornamentals are invasive, but again, that's where the problem's coming from. So we call these sleeper species. When you're purchasing something from the ornamental industry and, our climate is changing and it's becoming more favorable, and basically some of these species are waking up and they're behaving very aggressively. They're spreading throughout our fields, our woodlands, and then they become very aggressive. And at that point, they get assessed and they're like, wow, this is an invasive species. And again, they are capable of rapid reproduction and they displace native species, causing harm. In the chat box, the pictures on this one, you are looking at Creeping Charlie, which is not one of my favorites. It's an herb. And then the other one on the top is actually lesser celandine, fig buttercup, which is really bad news when it gets in some of these wetland areas. We have a place up here on the Mohawk where it took over 70 acres of the forest floor. Nothing else grows. It's awful. Its common lookalike is marsh marigold. Right. Other quick characteristics. Again, invasive species do not have competition or known predators. They generally have competitive advantages over local species. They might produce more flowers and more seed. They may push out their leaves early in April. They have reproductive capabilities greater than the locals, and they tend to take over the environment very quickly. These are generalizations, but they often have low nutritional value. So, for example, birds might not always benefit from fruit that's on these, even though you're seeing them eat the berries. Some of them are nutritious, but they're capable of greater populations and dispersal. They populate disturbed soils quickly, and once established, they can keep other plants from moving in through allelopathic processes, chemical warfare. In New York State, there are prohibited species that cannot be knowingly possessed with the intent to sell, import, purchase, or transport, or introduce in a free living state. These blue and green books, if you ever get your hands on them, you can find them on the internet. They're just the high threats and very high threat species that are really problematic. It's a great resource for you to learn that you can, I just admitted somebody, sorry. That you can use to learn the species, but I'll provide some other resources before we're done tonight. And again, these are the high threat and very high threat. These are really problematic. There are other invasive species that have low ranking or moderate rankings. Periwinkle is one of them. It doesn't produce seeds, so it's not the most troublesome or worrisome plant out there, so that has a really low ranking, so you wouldn't find it in this book. There are also regulated species. These are still sold in the industry. They're supposed to come with a tag like you see in the picture, and that's kind of a red flag, right? If there's a plant that's still being sold because there's a large stock of it for like a 5 to 10 year supply, and the state does not want to put people out of business, and they're allowing them to reduce their stockpiles, you see those invasive species labels, that's a warning. That that this is probably going to be problematic or could be problematic. And so there's a list of those that are also in the green and blue book. Any questions so far? Feel free to unmute yourself. I'll just pause for a moment for any quick questions. Heidi has put the DEC books in the chat. If you want to click on that link and benchmark it to your laptop, if you want to, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to admit somebody to the workshop. They're still trickling in. All right. So the next part here, we did the introduction, we did a definition. I do want to talk briefly about how these species are identified and assessed and ranked. Okay. There has been a new system created in which they look at, one, the ecological impact, two, the biological characteristics and its dispersibility, its amplitude and distribution, and difficulty to control. Okay, I'll pick on a plant for an example. Japanese knotweed, most of you are familiar with. Its ecological impact is really high in riparian corridors along streams. It will typically wipe out most native species. It has a taproot that grows up to 10 feet deep and 60 feet long for its rhizomes. And so it occupies this structure and it gets a really high assessment score. It's like an 8-page document and it probably has like a 39 out of 40 points. In terms of its dispersibility, it breaks up in flood conditions, and the little pieces between the nodes on the stalk can actually grow root fibers, and it vegetatively grows from its pieces. It produces seeds, so it's easily dispersed, and when it's mowed, all the pieces on the mower deck, that mower goes to another location, it spreads the fragments of the plant, and they can also reproduce. So that also gets a high value of like 20 out of 25. Its distribution, again, lakes, streams, repairing corridors. I'm not finding it all the time in every forest floor. It's not a shade tolerant, so it's not in the interior of the forest. It has a lower score there of around like 15, but it's difficulty to control. If you don't control the roots, it's just going to keep persisting. And that gets a high score of like 10 out of 10. So that plant has a high ranking of around 90. And so it's a very high threat ranking. And those are plants that we're concerned about are the very high threat. There's a second layer to this, the population of the plants. Tier 4, if you look on this graph, so this is time, we have introduction in the bottom. As we move to the right, time increases several years and decades. And if the plant is left unchecked, it will grow and become more populated throughout our environment if it's a high threat or very high threat species. Plants that have been around a long time, like Japanese knotweed, common reed, they're called tier 4 because they're found in almost every state, every county in New York, from north to south, and they're just large populations. So they're widespread, difficult to control, and then manage becomes an issue because you just can't afford to manage the plant. It's already too well established. On the back end, tier 1 species aren't here yet. They're not here, they're not in New York. These are species that are super high threat. We're aware of them. We put out like prevention and education things. We talk about them. In 2017, we're telling everybody about spotted lanternfly. It wasn't in New York. Now that bug is in New York. It's in several populations. It became a tier 2. At this point, it's still, we can still manage it with limited resources and limited staff. We go out. This is typically when we have less than 10 populations in the region. We can go out. We identify them. People like community scientists like yourself call them in, report them on iMap. Okay, I found this spotted lanternfly. We can go and take care of the problem. When they get between 10 to 60 populations, it becomes a little bit more difficult to manage. We slow the spread down. Then we start to do things like suppression and keep them out of areas that are, ecologically significant. So this is the key: is knowing the species before they arrive. When they get here, is then actually removing them in a cost-feasible manner. Now, tier 4 species are common, and you'll find them on a lot of the Columbia Land Conservancy properties. And you can make a goal that we want to suppress or exclude them from those properties. And so they are worth removing local eradication from an area, especially if there's a conservation value to that property. Maybe there's rare and endangered species we want to protect. Maybe we want to preserve the forest or the aesthetics of that property and the Land Conservancy. So this is still worth removing, because you can do a lot of work and restore the landscape, and it will stay that way for a very long time. We have a lot of success when we remove tier 2 species and tier 3 in locations. We're finding that they don't come back. It's the initial disturbance where somebody had a tractor, they moved the soil, the invasives were brought in on the seeds of the materials, on the equipment, they were wind blown, they take over that area really quickly. So once it's restored, it's difficult for that invasive to kind of move into that spot. This may be worth a picture for you folks if you have your cell phones handy. The New York State Natural Heritage Program has created this wonderful website where you can look up all the different species by region. So we're the Capital Region PRISM, Columbia County, Rensselaer County, Albany. You could click that button. You can say terrestrial plants, select any tier you want, and these are defined on their website, and then it generates a list of the species. Not all of them, but many of them you can click on to get more information, like the Amur honeysuckle. It is a very high threat species. It has no socioeconomic value in the nursery industry. And so it's ranked as a tier 3, probably should be a tier 4 species at this point. It's found everywhere. We would only manage it in our office on public lands if it was encroaching a rare endangered species. Columbia Land Conservancy, let's get rid of it in the parking lot so we're not pushing the seeds further into the properties. So those are things to think about with some of these species. The other thing, if it's on your property, you can clean out your property, maybe not 500 acres of it, but you can still manage your property. If we all did our part with our properties, we wouldn't have a lot of these things getting trampled around on our equipment or clothing or bird droppings, etc. Real quick lesson on the difference between management. So most of you are pretty familiar with kudzu. It has an overall assessment ranking of 84. That's a very high threat species. It's a tier 2 in our region. So there's only 2 locations that we're aware of and it's been treated. That's real easy and economic to manage. This is also an indicator species for us. This has typically been a warm weather climate plant. It does not typically thrive in cold climates. The fact that it's crawling north with latitude is a piece of evidence to support, that our climate is changing. And I would expect to see this more and more with time. And again, this is something, if you see kudzu, report it, iMap. It is found in the lower Hudson in New York City and Long Island. It is coming up the Hudson Valley. On the other hand, Vinca major and Vinca minor, both of them are invasive, okay, just so you know. They have a low assessment of 57. I don't manage this plant. It might take 40 or 50 decades for that to cover the forest floor by like 10 acres. Not the most aggressive plant. It won't be in the blue or green books, but it's a moderately ranked invasive species. If I had to spend my time, I'm going after this high threat species in low populations first. But again, it's okay to treat something like Oriental bittersweet. Unfortunately, it's found everywhere in New York State. It's very high threat. It strangles trees, produces lots of fruit. I remove it from my property. When I had purchased the property that I'm on now, it was everywhere. I don't have anything. I do have to deal with the seed bank. I go out and pick little tiny, like 6-inch stems once a year. This time, usually I go out and I pick up about 40 or 50 of them. It takes me a half hour. I'm done. I just weed it in my yard. These are things that you can do. You can also treat big infestations. So moving on, if you folks get into like, okay, I want to identify invasive species and know more about them. When you start doing that, you also start to learn and become more aware of, the native species. So I'll provide a resource. One of them is already linked. It's the Mid-Atlantic Field Guide for non-native species. I'll show that. I'll share it with you folks. But also you have the blue and green books that Heidi posted. But another thing you can do is there are resources available from accredited institutions. Think of Cornell University, Penn State. There's New York State Invasive Species Clearinghouse. There are places like the NRCS, the New York State DEC. Use the accredited institutions and their information to help understand basic levels of identification and control. When you read websites that are posted by bloggers or something the neighbor tells you, you might get incorrect information. And if you try to remove something, you might make it worse. Like a lot of people are sometimes they're like, oh, my neighbor told me to mow the Japanese knotweed. Now it's all over my yard. That's because the piece is grown. They didn't realize that. So you really want to do the research and look at accredited institutions. All right, there's 2 messages. Let me look. Half an acre possum or forest floor filled with Vinca major, nothing else there. And that's typical. They escape our gardens, those low threat invasive species, and they're kind of found like in the immediate area. The high threat ones, they're the ones like the common reed, the Japanese knotweed, the Oriental bittersweet. Any other questions so far? It's okay if you want to unmute. I'll pause for a brief moment. Okay, some other things. We'll move on here. I'm going to go briefly here about management, and it might be a little bit much for everyone, but maybe there's something you can take away here. Again, my focus is what can you do in your yard and what can you do on a Columbia Land Conservancy property? A small group of people, small group of community scientists that adopt a trail on one of the CLC properties, and you go out once or twice a year with approval from the organization, you can do trail work. You can remove things, and over time, you can really beat back these infestations and protect the interior of these properties. So it's something to think about. And most of the time, what you can do is you might have a management goal. And by going out using iMap invasives, you can help out mapping where the invasives are. That will help people like Tim and Heidi and other managers at the CLC to actually say, okay, here's these invasives. All right, this is one we might have to live with. Well, this one's kind of high threat and we don't have a lot of it. Let's go and remove that. And those efforts can be directed for volunteer projects, and they can also be used internally with staff. And so you can help by reporting on these lands. And then that will let them make some management goals and help prioritize their work. It helps them formulate a framework of response. The other thing is just simply going out on the properties and reporting something is valuable. Now, yeah, you might report, okay, there's some purple loosestrife here, and they might choose not to do anything, but then you might say, hey, I saw that triangular plant with the leaves that's mile a minute. That would raise some flags, like, let's get out there and take care of that so it doesn't become a disaster. And again, using the best management practices available, sometimes conducting work with limited capacity. So that's why you want to produce this framework or response, or at least help in that chain. In our line of work, and I'll be brief, I'm just going to go through this cycle real quick. So this is what we do. We establish goals. We find properties that are high value, and we say, okay, we're going to work on these properties because we can't do it everywhere. I'm not going to work in a brown field or a place next to Kmart that has little value, but I might identify parcels or properties that have significant ecological communities, and that's where we're going to focus our efforts, and we're going to set some goals. Then we're going to look at what species are there by early identification and reporting. And we'll be doing that with CLC staff next week, and we'll be out there on the 17th. And we can help people show them how to identify species in the field and report. Once we know what's there, then you say, okay, I might live with these species. This is okay. They're low threat. Here are some that are a little bit more concerning, and I might make it a target to protect a conservation value. Maybe there's some rare and endangered spring ephemerals that we want to protect. And you think, okay, let's remove these here. So they're little goals that you can do to help protect your properties. And then once that's established, it's simple as developing a plan. All right, here's the map. Here's the area we're going to work in. And here's the best management practices. And then we're going to implement those removals. Manual and mechanical removals work. And so with doing those actions, and then we can assess if they worked or not the following year. What you'll notice is that invasive species, this is not a one and done. Like you might tackle a satellite infestation, then come back the next year and the next year. Or there might be something in the seed bank that you need to take care of. We use IPM. It's an adaptive ecosystem-based approach for exploring multiple controls. Small infestations, typically manual and mechanical controls. And it's based on the amount of resources that are available. Basically, are there people in the community that want to assist? Are there people internally that we can use to do some of this labor? And it requires dedication over time. So the first line of IPM is one, cultural controls. This is like prevention. Let's not track things further into the properties. Let's make sure we have clean equipment. We have clean boots. We're not bringing new stuff in. The other part of cultural controls is if there's soil that's disturbed, let's replant natives right away. And that's a cultural control. Then if we have species, we look at physical and mechanical. It's simply digging up honeysuckle. Just getting a shovel out, cutting the stems, right? You can do a lot with this work here, even on your own properties. Biological controls are a little bit different. There are biological controls out there doing work. They keep purple loosestrife in check. There's a little purple loosestrife beetle. It's super cute. There's 3 of them actually that keep that thing, and it used to be found everywhere. Now you just see it in pockets here and there, and the beetles, they increase in population, they eat it, and then the loosestrife decreases. Chemical controls have their place. It is a tool. In our business, we use them very, very, very minuscule amounts, and we do so to protect rare and endangered species so they don't become extinct. They do have their place. They should be evaluated appropriately. Some chemicals are very specific and selective to their treatments, and they have very little impact on the surrounding communities. When we are talking about invasive species work, it's much different than you hear about the insecticides and the herbicides in the agricultural industry, which are used by the millions of metric tons coating our seed supply on our field. The other place that you get a lot of this is coming from our our yards, unfortunately, in this weird desire to have these manicured lawns. Invasive species management is used on a very limited amount, not even close. We're talking just a few milliliters in some cases that's diluted, liters, maybe only a couple pounds of material in this type of management, unless it's on a large scale project. But for us, this is the last part. So what you guys can do, manual and mechanical controls, volunteer management, pulling, grubbing, cutting, girdling, grazing, hoeing, mowing, and excavating. These are things that get a group of 5 to 10 people together. You can make a difference. We find that these invasive species are sometimes only in those trails, parking lot areas. There might be a certain part of your property where you can knock them out. And again, cultural controls, you want to plant as soon as you can to provide competition for reseeding or plants that resucker or resprout. Biological controls, depending on the species, you can buy stuff if it's been released in New York. Our office, we're constantly working with other agencies to release them. And then chemical controls, again, in that limited supply. So this illustration is a great way to do work. Say if we pulled into a parking lot at Over Mountain and we saw that there was honeysuckle, we walked down the trail and we found as we moved away from the parking area, the honeysuckle decreased. Well, this would be something that might be considered for a conservation target. People that are coming in with their boots might be carrying the seeds further into the preserve. And so one of the things you can do is work on removing the satellite populations first over time, and then main infestations to eliminate it so you're not causing further harm in that environment. So that's just a simple diagram like how things can be tackled on your property, on a park or a preserve, or even with natural resource workers. It's what we do. All right, so I'm going to zip ahead a little bit. I did have a delay tonight, and I want to make sure I cover everything. So again, we look at species by assessing their threat. High threat and very high threat first. We do it in low populations. If they're high threat and very high threat and they're tier 4 and found everywhere, well, we might suppress or exclude them from encroaching on critical habitat. Some other things we can do is you can look at them by location, by region, or by vector. Do we have some type of plant that's producing seed that's falling in a stream and carrying it further into a preserve? So that would be like by vector, by its method of spread. Any questions so far from the group? I'll pause for a moment.
Hey, Chris, it's Tim. I have a really specific question.
Go for it.
Until later, but it's about garlic mustard. I've been trying to manage garlic mustard recently. And my question is, it seems like it's kind of killed off a huge area of one of my perennial beds because I know it's allelopathic. I wonder if that you think is true. And number two, if I do remove it, can I plant new plants there, or is that allelopathic chemicals in there for quite a while, or do I need to change the soil? I mean, is it just going to be dead for a while? What can I do about that?
Okay, this is a very good question, Tim, and also it's a little bit difficult. I'm going to assume most of you know what garlic mustard is. Maybe I can find a picture in a little bit. When Tim says it's allelopathic, it produces a chemical. I forget the name, but it's related to like walnut, the same chemical that walnuts produce. And it changes the soil composition as a defense mechanism. And it makes it really difficult for certain species to live in that soil. Okay? Garlic mustard is a shallow rooted plant. Depending on the size of the infestation, there may not be a lot of chemical in the ground. So sometimes people have like, okay, I've got 5 or 6 here in this 10-foot area, or I have 180,000 in this 10-foot square area. The more garlic mustard, the greater the concentration of that chemical in the upper soil. So that would be more difficult. And then it becomes like, if I remove it, there might be some seeds in there that keep popping back up. The question is, can I get something to grow back in that space? And I think you're going to have to do some trial and experiment. How long does the chemical last? I'm sure it eventually breaks down over time. I do not have that information, but I would try and I would remove and I would till to mix up the soil a little bit. Make sure you clean your equipment when you're done. I might even solarize that patch for a year or two. Not everybody can do that where you put a plastic coating over it to keep new spring seedlings and then try and reseed it and replant. Something else you can look at is what's working well with the garlic mustard that's a native. And they might be more tolerant of that chemical, and that's something I would want to propagate or to spread or grow in that area. So that's the best I can do, Tim. I don't have a lot of specific information on how long it takes to reestablish a native. And I'm sure, though, it has to do with the number of stems present. I do see people's gardens where they remove garlic mustard and they're able to reestablish the natives. You just have to be a little bit more diligent with your weeding. One last comment on garlic mustard is the seeds. It produces hundreds of thousands of seeds. Not all of them are viable. That's why you want to pull them. And I do know people that have been successful at pulling them and reducing the populations. The problem is if your neighbor has a field of it, it's just going to keep blowing over into your yard. And so then that becomes another issue. Any other questions before I move on? Feel free to make comments in the chat box. I do see some with Canada thistle and stiltgrass. Okay, so I'll talk about them briefly and then I'll do a couple examples. So thistle is a tricky plant. First, it's a primary successional plant and it really likes sunlight. And so it does produce those seeds, right? So one of the things you can do to manage it is first, if you can't dig it up and remove it, you can cut the seeds with a pair of scissors and bag them, stop it from regrowing. A lot of time the thistle, though, it's fairly easy with the shovel to dig up. Thistles are rather unique if you had to go the other end of the spectrum, right? You can't do the shoveling, but it's just so much. Maybe you want to consider doing a chemical treatment. There is a selective herbicide that is specifically engineered for knapweeds and thistles that you can use as a foliar spray. It blocks one of the cellular movements of the materials in it, and it will kill the plant. It like artificially senesces it into its death, but it won't harm any of the native plants surrounding it. So it's one of those that's got a really decent chemical that's selective. We use it with our partners on bird grassland trust where there's rare and endangered birds to reduce the populations. Also, the Saratoga battlefields use it to protect some of their grassland habitat. And again, it's nice because it's a selective herbicide. I personally go for the digging first. Now, in terms of like burning, all this other stuff, my recommendation is you want to look up the thistle plant and find the best management recommendations and read through them and choose the appropriate technique that's going to result in the most success that you can do. So look up the literature before you choose to do things. Burning right now scares me. We've had our first rainstorm tonight in like 40 days where I live. You know, having fires right now really make me nervous. And yes, fire does work, but you have to check with local permitting to see if you can do certain types of burns. And that usually requires a lot of experience so you don't have things get out of control. Stiltgrass is tough. We mow stiltgrass before it goes to seed. We pull it. You can use herbicides. It works great. It also, you could mow it before it goes to seed, and then you can actually use a weed torch and cook the seeds in that top surface layer. I know it is problematic, but we have a lot of success using weed whackers and reducing the population. And then we actually go to the same sites and we actually cut the goldenrod in the area and we help disperse it. We're actually doing work as a cultural control. We've reduced populations of some Japanese stiltgrass up to 90%, where it's just residual and we just maintain it a little bit. All right, again, in both cases, look up the best management practices or contact your PRISM for information. I threw up two tonight before we move on to our next segue of the program, and thank you for the questions. Japanese barberry. So I can't cover, hundreds of species, right? And everybody has one that's important to them in their yard. Everybody's got like 2 or 3 that they don't like this invasive. I have a couple invasives I like, and some of them I don't like. None of them are good, but some of them, I'm very, I have disdain for. Tim probably hates his garlic mustard, right? I don't have any on my property, so I don't worry about it too much. Japanese barberry. So this is a great one that sold in the nursing industry. People purchased it like mad. Does really good in droughty conditions. Grows, has a nice vibrant color if you get the cultivar with the red. I felt at one point in time, every Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware was selling it. Every Rite Aid, CVS, Hannaford, Price Chopper. I wish we had Wegmans where I live. Everybody was buying that and putting it in every parking lot area for green space. And unfortunately, over a 30-year period of time, we learned that it was highly invasive. Okay, the birds eat those nice red seeds that you see. They disperse them with droppings. I find this stuff in the forest. I'll be 5-6 miles from the nearest trail, nearest road, and the birds are dropping it in this forest floor. You can see in the bottom middle picture, that's in the fall, and that is barberry that's about knee high. It's impenetrable. It grows so thick that all of those ash trees and maple trees that you're seeing in the picture there, the seedlings, they don't even have a chance. They don't make it. They don't get enough sunlight. The other issue with the plant, it harbors ticks. The white-footed deer mouse that carries ticks, they tend to hide in there for protection from raptors. Barberry also grows really dense. You see in that lower left picture, it has a microclimate where it increases the humidity if you actually do a test for humidity. So the ticks don't actually dissect in hot weather. So people from the Department of Health that have barberry around their foundations of their homes have higher rates of Lyme disease from this plant. It's a human health threat. It's also a forest health threat. You can see the picture in the natural, it reverts to its normal state. It loses its highly cultivated, red property. There's like a lemon drop one that's lemon colored. There's the red one. It's really good. I like it. It's a pretty plant. But you can see that it reverts back to its normal state. Okay. So it's really, really problematic. Dense stands, highly shade tolerant. So this is one that's high threat. It will thrive under the forest canopy. This one's something I would tend to remove if I was a Lake George Land Conservancy. This is one of theirs that they have marked for a conservation target because the potential for more Lyme on their trails for the people that are visiting the property, the potential to the damage to the forest regeneration that does. So it's a target they selected, but this is a good one to remove. It's easy to get rid of. There's a couple of things. If you take a shovel to it, it will dissect and die real quickly. If you can pop the root system out in sandy soils and just turn it over, it will die, especially in drought conditions. You can cut it back, you can hack at it with heavier equipment, but it's something that can be done. And so that's what I recommend, is digging it up. You could take a brush hog to it if you have a really big, like a half an acre. There are mechanical, more aggressive means that you can do. But you can actually reduce the population. The problem with hand pulling, it's got these really sharp needles. It's not fun to work with. You have to use thick clothing. And then, of course, there's always the last resort is you can use herbicides. I do see this growing sometimes in the woods, and it spreads like wildfire, like garlic mustard. Other times I see it in populations, and it's just like a couple stems here and there. So depending on the soil conditions, location, it might be more aggressive than others. But if you see it like on a property and it shows up on your property and it's only 1 or 2 stems, take care of it. And the same thing with the Columbia Land Conservancy. If you find it in low populations, it might be something worth removing. Here's my other second example for the night. Real quick show of hands if you've seen wild parsnips in the carrot family. Has anybody had any experiences with getting a burn from wild parsnips? Good, I'm not seeing too many hands. I do see a lot of black screens with names on them. All right, wild parsnips. You can see it's in the carrot family. You see it has the stem like parsnips. Don't eat it. You can see the deeply lobed leaves serrated on the sides. Early spring, it'll look like this on the ground in this rosette, but then it grows rapidly and it bolts and produces a stalk. It can be like knee high, okay? The umbel is this star-shaped flower. And when you see this, it's kind of like, okay, I need to be careful here, 2 to 5 feet. It has some smooth, rigid stem or stalk. There are some hairs on it. It's a biennial. The first year is the rosette, the second year bolt, sorry. And the sap does cause a skin irritation that can be much stronger than poison ivy. Okay. It is a photochemical reaction with sunlight, so it's different than the oils and poison ivy. It does cause some pretty decent burns and blistering. In terms of management, so here's a field of it, right? Wild parsnips is moderately ranked invasive species. It gets a score around 59 to 64, so it's not high threat. There are still natives in this field that produce fruits, berries, and flowers that are productive in the ecosystem. So it's not a super high threat. If I put a trail system through here, it's a problem, right? If you have like birding boxes and you're encouraging people to go in there, it's going to be a problem because they're going to brush up against it. But it's not super high threat, but this concentration, maybe it is. Maybe regionally or in your local property, it is a concern. One of the ways that this is spread is these seeds. You see them on the umbel here. Man, people make the mistake. They mow their fields, and so they disperse the seeds all over the place. And that's one of its primary methods for dispersal. Typically, this is a sun-loving plant. You'll see it dispersed all over the New York State Thruway. You see it in farm fields. And it's because it's spread by seeds, by mowing, mechanical methods. That's also one of the ways that you can get rid of it. If you cut the plant with a mower before it goes to seed, and you do that repetitively over 2 to 3 years, the seed stock will get reduced and depleted, and you'll see a decrease in its prevalence across the landscape. So it's something that can be treated mechanically. People do remove it using shovels, but there's a health threat, right? If you're wearing flannel, gloves, Tyvek suit would be best, but some people remove it wearing like, you know, layers, jeans and their flannel, and they'll tape their gloves to their wrists. The problem is they get hot and sweaty, and then their clothes get damp, and they get some of the oils while they're removing it on the clothes, and then it leaks back through their clothes, and they get burned through their clothes. But it can be done that way. That's just one of the hazards there. But again, that's a specific way of managing it. 2 different plants, different types of management, different times to manage them. So again, don't mow it when it's in seed, right? If it's not in seed, that's one way to reduce the populations. All right, so when I talk about best management practices, a lot of times they'll give you, okay, manual, this is good to do if it's less than a half an acre. If it's 5 acres, you might want to consider using a chemical control. If there's biologicals, here's what you can use. But they give treatment tables, and there's a lot of information, and you want to follow them. But grubbing and pulling, certain times are better than others, and it's species specific. You know, mowing is going to work based on early, but if you mow late, it's already gone to the seed, and that's not a good idea. So sometimes these best management practices will give you these treatment tables and give you more information when you should do things and when you should not do them. Don't try to control an invasive species unless you have a plan and you select the method in which you want to implement that control. I'm throwing this picture up to wrap up this part of the discussion. This is the Big Bend parcel, which has been donated to one of the state parks up north. It used to be owned by a paper company. It's been heavily logged. This is the Hudson River. These roads where you see trees are skid roads where there was logging equipment that came back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, pulling the logs out. And the green dots actually represent honeysuckle and other common multiflora rose that you would see in an area that's been logged. And the highest concentrations of plants are where the skid roads are. Back and forth, the bulldozers, the skid steers basically move the seed bank back and forth, and there's huge concentrations. Part of this parcel is going to be restored. There will be controlled burns there with the Albany pine bush, and they are going to restore it for lupin, for the Carner blue butterfly, for a third site for an endangered species. There are a couple of other problems. This area over here, there are black locust trees. They are invasive in this instance. They produce a chemical in the soil that will keep lupin from growing. There's a grove of 12 trees on this side, and there's about 100 seedlings throughout here. So this is something that should be managed and removed to help protect any locations where they decide to have those lupin fields. My guess is they're going to put them back here and over here. This over here is Japanese barberry, and this is Japanese barberry. There's no public access to this parcel. The birds in the riparian corridor are, dropping the seeds in their excrement, and that's why you get these big populations by bird dispersal. Human dispersal of honeysuckle, bird dispersal of Japanese barberry. All right, any questions so far? I'm checking the chat box. Somebody had mentioned about solarizing with the seeds. There are techniques for doing solarization. You can always reach out to our office. Some people actually have landing pads, like an old concrete foundation where they'll put black tarps down. They'll put the detritus from an invasive after control in there. They'll cover it to let them rot, and they won't mix them with their compost. Please do not do that. Right. Any other questions from the group so far? All right, a couple of things before I move on to part 2 of our workshop tonight. It's 7:35. Let's take a 2-minute break. Is that okay with people? Anybody want to give me a thumbs up? I only see a handful of people. Just a quick 2-minute break if anybody wants to stand up and stretch, move around. And we're going to resume with the next part, which is iMap's invasive mobile training. So if you have your phone, you might want to open up the app. Give you everybody a moment to do that. There's a chat, a long chat. There's people.
Chris?
Yeah.
I went to download the mobile app I have an Android, and it says that my phone is not compatible.
I will address that issue.
Okay. Thanks.
Let me answer the chat, and then because it'll finish up the last, and then I'll discuss some of the errors with the nature serve.
Okay. Thanks.
Somebody is mentioning with repeated mowing, which is a form of mechanical or manual controls. And yes, it can be very effective in managing a fair amount of invasives. The issue there is we will do 4 to 7 grubbing, pulling, or mowing treatments in a season on certain invasives. Because you want to weaken the starches in the root system, and you let them grow, you come back, you cut, you let them grow, you come back, you cut, you let them grow, you come back, you let them cut. The problem with this method is that sometimes there's enzymes that are stimulated in certain invasive species, and it causes them to sucker aggressively. And if you miss mowing treatments for a season, you've now made a bigger problem. That requires diligence and an understanding. You need to come back 4 to 5 times 1 year. Year 2, it might be 4 to 5 times. Year 3, maybe you only need to do it 3 times, 2 times. Then you can get it to a controllable amount. Sometimes there's a seed bank. Sometimes people will do this repeatedly and then use a little bit of chemicals to finish it off, so there's less impact on the environment. So I do agree with that technique. We use it in our office, but you have to be dedicated to doing that type of program over at least 3 to 5 year period. Bittersweet question. I prefer to grub with a cultivator the roots and pull them out. You have to attack the roots. If it's a really thick stem, like over 1 inch, you can cut it real high in the tree, real low to the ground. The carbohydrates are in the canopy, it will die. It's the thin ones in Oreo bittersweet, like the size of my finger. That's where you need to either pull them out of the ground and get as much of the root as you can. I have a lot of success doing that in yards. Another thing you can do is sometimes you can cut after it's flowered, after it's fruited, and actually wick it with a tiny paintbrush or a little squirt of diluted Roundup, and that will get translocated and pulled into the root system, because late in the year, a lot of plants are storing their carbohydrates to kill the roots. So there's a lot of different techniques with that. Again, look at a control best management practice and determine what's best for you and your values and your capabilities on your property. Yeah, this is a concern. Like, there is a point where the bittersweet, and I get that, I see that where there's fields of it, right? And that's where you have to, that's usually typically chemical controls are the best practice for large infestations, which is unfortunate. And you have to, like, okay, I'm not going to use the chemicals, then you let the bittersweet live. Bittersweet is a plant that I would argue for a biological control research. I don't know a lot of the history of where this has stopped. There is American bittersweet, which is a native, but I haven't any recent information. I know it hybridizes with Oriental bittersweet, and it might be at the point where if there's a biological control that eats both plants, maybe it's worth releasing, because the American bittersweet is threatened now at the point that I do see it very rarely at this point. So long-term control would be a biological control, but I don't know anybody that's currently working on that or if it's done. And that would be a good long-term solution to that. My best property is prevention. Don't let it get like the 2 acres. That's what you want to do, prevent. Keep it out of the area. So that can be problematic, and sometimes it's something you have to live with. Don't have all the answers. There are a lot of other invasives out there. It's worth doing the work. It's worth doing the management. There are places that have no invasives. Let's slow the spread, prevent its introduction. There are things we can do. We can restore the landscape. But there are small parcels, maybe 2 acres, where, hey, let's not put a trail here. Let's just let that be and let it do its thing. There are other areas we can focus on. Any other questions about management before we move on to iMap training? All right. So one of our goals tonight, and I know not everybody's going to participate, but maybe you can in your yard or your favorite park or preserve, is doing the community science part of this. Yeah, you can volunteer with the CLC. Maybe something Heidi and Tim and I will talk about in the future is doing like a volunteer project once or twice a year at a place where the PRISM will come with staff and we'll come with volunteers and do stuff. We have one on the 17th, but maybe we can find some really good targets to do at your favorite place. New York State has a statewide database through the Natural Heritage Program called iMap Invasives. The host that serves the platform is called NatureServe. It's an international software company. Unfortunately, every time our phones go from an iPhone 8 to 9 to 10, they have to update the software. And Android recently updated some of their software, which is not compatible with the app. We found out 3 weeks ago, maybe 4. So those of you that have an Android app, and I actually had somebody with a Google phone the other day call me, and I was like, yep, so we added that to the list. They're aware of the problem. There's a computer programmer that works with us on this in the DEC, and they send their notes and the code, and then NatureServe incorporates it, and then they check with the Apple products, and they work together, and it just takes time. And they're probably going to make the fix on June 20th. I guarantee that's how it'll roll. It'll happen just after the fact. But what I recommend doing for now is you folks be patient if you don't have that option. However, I talked to Addison and Sam. We might bring some tablets for people to use on the 17th as loaners that they can use. We can partner people up with phones and they can do it together. It's actually pretty easy to use, but man, it's a handy tool. I'm not going to go in depth about it tonight, but there's 2 platforms. You can log into your computer, go to iMap Invasives on your desktop computer or your laptop. You sign up for it, you check your email, make sure you don't forget your password, you're good to go. You can log into the computer and then you can explore iMap Invasives. There's a lot more functions on the desktop. You can draw polygons, treatments, you can look up information. It's fantastic for natural resource workers. Okay? For community scientists, using your phone is great. It's limited though, because all you're going to do with that is take a picture of a plant and tell me if it's there or not. And then you hit the send button and then it gets logged into the server. You can then go back online at home, look it up on the desktop and see your point. Okay? They're 2 different things. People will sometimes try to go to the internet on their phone and use iMap as a mobile tool. It doesn't work that way. You have to download the app, have a password, register, you look on your email and accept the user agreement, and then you can use the app. And what I'm going to focus on tonight is the app. It'll take like 20 minutes, not even. Some of you probably already figured it out. If you want to sit back and chill, that's fine until we meet in the field. The app is really powerful though. The high threat species, these tier 1s and 2s that move into our communities, are being reported by the general public, not our staff, not the DEC, not Department Ag and Market. It's coming from you folks. The first line of defense is the general public. Learn your bugs, learn your plants, you can report them. The hemlock woolly adelgid outbreak in Lake George, which was treated thousands of acres, was reported by a camper that took an iMap course. Spotted lanternfly is constantly reported by iMap from people that know about it. Because we can't be everywhere. There's not enough resources dedicated to the environment. There's not enough resource managers by the state or private land conservancies. There's not enough. We need your help. On the backside, where is this valuable? Yeah, you took a picture of a plant that's invasive, then what? We get alerts. On my email, I get an alert from iMap Invasive once a week that shows me all the high threat species. And if I see anything like spotted lanternfly, if I see oak wilt, we are mobilizing quickly. We're getting a hold of Department of Ag and Markets. We're getting a hold of DEC, and we're addressing the problem like rapid response. If I get a picture of purple loosestrife, I'm not going to act on it. Widespread, and there's a biological control that keeps the populations down, that it's manageable and it's not such a harm anymore. I'm going to ignore that. If somebody sends me common reed, which is found everywhere, I'm going to ignore it. If somebody sends me common reed and I look at the location and it's near Benitez Lake where there's no common reed and there's rare endangered species and it's only the size of 10 by 10 square feet, I'm probably going to remove it because it's worth suppressing and excluding. Okay, so it's an important tool for reporting and it's a fun activity to do. Where you can help the Columbia Land Conservancy is we can organize events. You can go on your own trails. Maybe we do a trail program. We can work on that where you can once a year walk a trail and upload any of the invasives that are found there. If there's something that's high threat, that can tell the Columbia Land Conservancy, let's get an organized crew out there and let's remove this. Or you can have people doing populations, so we get them all mapped out all over the place. And then based on those populations that are showing up on the desktop, all right, let's make this a conservation target where we can remove this. Oh, okay, there's some Oriental bittersweet here. It's been there for 10 years. It's not spreading. Maybe that's not the biggest concern at the moment. Or there's rare endangered species here. And now there's invasives. Let's do something about it. So that's the role that you can play. Any questions so far? I see nothing in the chat. I do appreciate people using the chat. Okay, so this is not the most romantic portion of the presentation. I hope you guys are all absorbing some really good material and having some thoughts and takeaways. There's more we can do, but this is kind of like the what can you do as an introduction so you have a good understanding of invasives. I'm going to review logging in, setting your preferences in the app, going over an observation for a fake species, which I'll have you like upload your mouse, your TV, or some inanimate object in your home that doesn't have personal information on it. Like don't take a picture of your electric bill and share it. You know, just something fun. Cats are always fun. I like dogs. I'm not home enough to have a dog, but I do have some mousers running around here. So those are things I'll cover quickly with you. And it's okay if some of you get lost. You show up in the field, we'll help you out and show you how to do this in the field. There's always a group like the rule of thirds. One group already gets it and understands. There's one group that you go and you show and then they pick it up. And then there's the third group like me, that's usually me when somebody's doing this. I get lost and I start looking at other things and I'm clicking on things I shouldn't be. And then I don't know what I did and I get lost and I need somebody to hold my hand, which is also a form of learning, which is fine. We'll be present in the field on the 17th to help you out. Again, it's an online database. It's used by natural resource workers. It's used by the community scientists, the public. We're going over this part, the phone. Okay. The desktop version, man, we use it for mapping out populations, determining distributions, where should we attack, how is it spreading through the state, is it widespread, is it only down here? And we can also put in treatment and we record treatments. We can actually record, okay, we found it, we reported it. Now we can record that we removed it and monitor its spread if we're having success or reducing the population over time. And again, we get email alerts. So you may not see those on the backside, but you can sign up for them. Some people do that. Online, it's www.nyimappinvasives.org. That's how you sign up. You click on the password part and it says you're not a, you don't have an account, register here, and then you check your email. We're not going to use this right now. We're going to solely focus on the phone. So again, computer is one thing. We're not going to worry about it. This is where you sign up, and that's where we review the data. It's where we record treatments. The reporting tool is the phone. And we want to use the phone, and you should have downloaded the app prior to this training. If you didn't, you probably could scramble right now and go online and download the app. You get to register your account, you check your email. You could do it if you're savvy enough. Probably not. That's where I would get lost with somebody training. But if you downloaded the app, we're going to be good to go. So again, I went over this really quickly, but my apologies. I should have backed these two slides up. Here's the Northeast. This is where it's heavily used. Southeast, Northeast, parts of Canada, Northwest. It appears like the coastlines are using iMap invasives. It's where the heavier populations are. People are actively reporting. There's all sorts of create a record, find a record, identify, measure. This is where you can actually make management plans and you can draw these things, which are polygons. So if this is over a mountain and say we had a patch, a searched area where we are looking for burning bush, and we search this area, we can log it in on the online version. We can draw in presence. Oh, we only found winged euonymus burning bush in this area near the road. That now tells us, oh, we don't, We're going to do treatment for that. This is the area we're going to work in. We can determine the acreage. Maybe we don't find any. We can put it in as a non-detect. Maybe we do find it and we treat it, and now we can record it as treated. This is all for online. This is the more technical stuff. I'm not reviewing how to do this today, but it has purpose. When you put a little point in on your phone, a dot's going to show up, and we'll know it's there. Okay, so that's the backside. That's really important. You should have done the pre-training homework where you went online, you downloaded you registered, for a password. They use jurisdiction. That means New York State. Some places use counties, parishes. There's provinces in Canada, so they use jurisdiction. It should be New York when you did that, just pointing that out. Again, there's some other things that I'll cover at the end, but there is an organizational account for the Columbia Land Conservancy. And in there, we made a bunch of projects for each one of the Columbia Land Conservancy properties. And I don't know how to handle this tonight, other than if you want to join a project, a specific property, there is a way that you can go in and request to join the organization online. It's that simple. And then I get an email, Heidi gets the email, and we accept you to that. Okay. There's another way in which I can do it where I can take your email, I can look up your account and just assign you. And this is something that I haven't been able to wrap my head around. I might just open it up and say, hey, if you know you want to be in a certain property for the Columbia Land Conservancy, tell me the name of the property you want to adopt, and we'll just assign you to that. And I might talk to Tim and Heidi afterward to find out what the best approach is. Some of you will be savvy enough to go online and join a project. You can find it. You can choose it. We'll get an email alert. It might take us a week to say, okay, accept this person, because it doesn't happen automatically. Or if you do an email to myself, I will assign you to a project that you request. So it's going to be two ways. You can choose, or I'll assign you. The problem is I could take all 22 people on the call and assign you to every property of the CLC, and it might take me a while. But I can do that. And so we'll discuss that later. But for now, if you know you really want to adopt a project, I got one too many P's in projects, feel free to email me a property you'd like to adopt, and I'll invite you to that as long as you have an account. Again, you install the app using the App Store. There is a problem with Android. Some of the older Androids might work. You know, if it works, great. If it doesn't, my apologies. It was outside of my control. It's just this has never happened before. iMap has been doing this, I think, since 2014. So it was just a really big snafu, and it was from their service provider. It happens from time to time. Usually they take care of it in like a week or less, and people don't even notice. All right, so I'm going to jump in. What's going on to the application? So if you guys can, would you please go to your phone? I'll pause between slides and find the iMap Invasive app that you should have downloaded. Just click on it and open up the app, and you're probably going to see a background where there's writing on it, which I can show you how to get rid of. Something that says add observation. All right, so this is, again, there's this part up here where I'm going to talk about this thing called the hamburger. There's 3 bars, and we're gonna adjust the preferences in there, okay? If you click on it, and don't go click crazy, you can always go back. If you click on it, you'll see select all, select none, upload, delete, preferences. We're going to focus on preferences, get you set up so you can record data appropriately. At the end, I'll show you how to upload. All right, so go ahead and hit, preferences. Click on it. I'm so glad it's raining outside. Raining. The new climate we're in. Last 4 years up here, I'm in northern Saratoga. It's been so dry. I've never seen 4 years straight. The trees are still living. My gardens are still making it. They're great. I'm so impressed with their toughness. All right, preferences. This giant set of information comes up, and you can scroll up or down. I'm only going to focus on the top part for now. Please just know that you want to just select New York, and we'll save these when we're done. Please use your email that you used to register the account. And please use the password you used to register for your account. They have to be the same. Sometimes the last little password you put in, it blinks, you know, and it might be like, you say you use like a dot or an exclamation point. You got to wait a moment for it to take. Okay? Double check your email, make sure you got it spelled right, double check your password. Those are things I can't help with too much other than if you're using the same one you signed up for, you should be fine. The retrieve iMap list you should do occasionally. You don't need to do it tonight. The best thing I can say, they should have just labeled this like refresh your software, refresh your app. So like if there's new species they add or no more data, it just uploads it so you have access to it. Or if they change one of these preferences, it just gives you the updated version. So this is something you should do maybe once a year, twice a year, depending on how often you use it. I hit this button when I'm in my home or office so I have good internet reception. Okay? Any questions on those? And again, we will be in the field doing the training to help you out. And I know not everybody was interested in it. Some people have left, which is fine. But feel free to ask questions. It's okay to be like, hey, what's going on here, Chris? So we're all set with this. I'm now going to scroll down. So I prefer common names as a scientist because I also work with the public, but common names can be confusing. A lot of people have different names regionally for different types of plants. If I'm writing a report or doing something special, I will use the scientific names. You choose whatever you want, whatever you prefer. Some people are really good with scientific names. Okay. I'm jumping down to picture quality. If you have an older phone, you might want to use a reduction in the picture quality. Like think of if you had like an iPhone 7, you know, something that was built 5 years ago. They didn't have the technology when the smartphones came out. The picture quality used a lot of space, slowed the processor down. If you have a new phone in the last 2 or 3 years and you know you've got a fancy smartphone, I would just click on 100%. Checkbox. Right here where it says save photos to my photo library, you can do that if you want. It's going to take up picture space. Okay. It will upload a photo when you take it to iMap, but it won't save it if you don't have that checked. You want to save it, check it. Also road or satellite, you know how you look at like Google Maps and you can pick satellites so you can see the greenery and the trees? You can do that. I prefer to take road. It's like a cartoon map because in the sunlight, it's hard to see infrastructure and it'll just be green where there's forested or vegetated areas. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but you can create a customized species list. You're going to find out there's like 180 different types of invasive species in here, and it's difficult to roll through the Rolodex. If I was doing, say, a forest health survey, and I was looking for 5 bugs, southern pine beetle, hemlock woolly delegate, emerald ash borer, I can actually select just those 7 bugs, so I don't have to scroll through hundreds of them. It's handy. Maybe we're doing a project and we're just going to upload winged euonymus, burning bush, and bittersweet. We could put those 2 in there. It's not hard, but I don't think we need to do that. I'd rather have you just have the whole list but just know you can make it specific. Questions so far? Alt map zoom, if you put it down to 1, it's going to just show your feet, you know what I mean? If you put it out to 12 or 14, it's going to show like county-wide or a city. You know, you might want to put it around 10 or 11, will probably be just fine for now, okay? All right. default project. We have projects set up for you. I haven't done this in a while. If you actually hit the drop-down arrow, you might, well, you probably haven't been invited to it yet, so you're not going to have anything, but that's where you can select your project. Again, you can go online, go to your settings like we're doing right now online, and you can request to be part. You can type in over mountain, and it will show up, and you hit the request button and alert sent. Once you're approved, then you can just select that project. You could select 5 properties for the Columbia Land Conservancy. They're there. You just have to do the request online. I might try and show you how to do that tonight if you want to. Default organization, there's the Columbia Land Conservancy. You don't need to be a member of the default organization. That would be for like Heidi or Tim or anybody like, I think maybe Luke, I'm guessing, works for the Columbia Land Conservancy. That would be somebody that should be in the organization. And Luke might be somebody that we work with to help out in the future with, selecting projects for people. Okay, so that's kind of a little bit more complicated, but it can be done. You can figure it out. There's directions. Then there's this thing that says show welcome instructions. Those are the fancy cursive writing on the app. If that annoys you, you can turn that off. If you need them as a guide, leave them on for a little bit. Ask Saturday if you want to get rid of them. And then last but not least, there's the save button. Okay. If you set up all your preferences the way you like them for now, you can always go back and change them. Please hit the save button now, especially if you're connected to the Wi-Fi, it should go pretty quick. If you have strong cellular reception, it'll work. If you have one bar, sometimes it gets slow, but go ahead and hit save. Any questions so far? Give me a thumbs up if you're with me still. Yay. All right, and it's okay if you're lost, we'll help you out. There's a Saturday training, we'll help you out. Good, oh good, I got the emojis. I always mess them up and I just can't figure out how to turn them off. Then I get stuck doing them. All right, moving on. Next part is the fun part. We're gonna do a test. Can you go back to your phone so it looks like in the left? You might have cursive writing on it if you didn't take off the welcome instructions, which is fine. So now we have this add observation. We're gonna practice just putting one record in, okay? So add observation, go ahead and press the green button. I know you've been wanting to press more stuff. Press the green button. Good, I see some of you doing that. And then you should get the following. Again, on the left of your screen, there's a really bad icon with this is a hand holding a phone. That's that icon. This is where the picture is gonna show up, okay? What we're gonna do is we're gonna take a picture. Do your mouse, favorite pet. Let's do this. Let's actually take your phone and go ahead and take a photo using the camera. I'm going to actually open up my phone and make sure I'm on the same page as you guys. And I was doing this all day today. So where is iMap? And I can't use my normal phone because I'm on audio. Again, if you can, please take a picture. And you should have something like your mouse, even if it's your keyboard. But again, don't use personal information. Be smart about what's in your background, okay? You might get a message that said allow while using the app. Go ahead and do what you need to do. So take photo using camera. There's also select photo from library. Please use word of caution. Select photo from library will not have it geolocated. It won't put the latitude and longitude in. I recommend not using that for anybody on this call. It might be in a rare case where you got a photo and you just couldn't get it in your camera or whatever because it was thundering and lightning and you ran to your car. You have to add the latitude and longitude later. But take a photo using camera. And notice it goes to your camera. I'm taking a picture of my mouse. It's a Logi mouse. I say use photo, and now it appears. Shake your head and give me a thumbs up if you got a little picture. Awesome. Okay. Next, see the custom species list. That's if you have it deselected or selected if you approved one. Right now, I have a check in mine. I'm not worried about that. Underneath that, it says species detected. Okay, so look at the arrows. Ignore custom species list. That's for advanced training. Before we select the species, you can press species detected or non-detected. Could you please press species detected? Thanks, I see you guys doing what you need to do. We do non-detect. I did them all day today. I was looking for beach leaf disease in Goose Egg State Forest. I didn't find any when I was going around. I kept putting non-detected. We want to know when it's going to show up there, because if it's further south, we can actually determine the rate of spread over time. So I put non-detected. Or I found a hemlock stand and it's a healthy hemlock, and I said non-detect for hemlock oleodelgit. We know there's a hemlock stand there. It tells managers there's the hemlock trees, and it also tells us that they're not infested yet, and we have a timestamp of their health. So I said species detected. Now let's go to where it says none selected. It's this part right here, and it should be at the top. It says a fake species for testing. Go ahead and click that and make sure it shows up in the box of fake species for testing. It might be a light blue color. Give me a shake your head if you got that far. Good, rather simple, right? Okay, and again, this can be done out in the field without reception. It's awesome. Next part. So again, you've got picture of an inanimate object, species detected. Date, I have June 6, 2023. Okay. It says GPS, unchecked and manually set the location. You can move your finger around and choose the dot where you want to do it. I don't recommend doing that. It's doing it for you automatically. There's weird cases where you want to do that. And then you have the roadmap. You do have a minus and a plus on the roadmap. You can shrink it, zoom in or out, depending on your reception, it might do it. But mine tonight, for whatever reason, there's a massive storm. It's not showing things the way I want it. So that will show you satellite or road maps, and it's very helpful. And you notice on the PowerPoint, you can see like there's an Albany, there's the pin for Albany, okay? Notice the latitude and longitude. If you have GPS enabled, it's going to record that automatically, and that's how the dot shows up on your computer for the resource managers, okay? If that latitude and longitude is not in there, it might be because you have a problem with enabling your GPS in your settings. You have to use the allow button. When it asks you allow to use this, you have to hit the allow button. Questions so far? Okay. Now we're getting towards the end. You guys have not selected to be part of a project yet or organization, which is fine. You don't have to do any of it, because the point you're putting in will still show up. It will still show up. What's helpful for like Luke or Heidi, if you select a project, we can actually filter on that in the database on the computer and just be specific for the project and see who's doing what and what was done. But again, it's not necessary, because we can still zoom in an area on the computer desktop version and look up the information. So for now, leave these blank. Later on, if you want to, you can assign yourself to the online version, or you can ask to request by email, and we'll get in the right property, okay? All right. So I'm going down now, and a couple of things are going to show up. Time searched in minutes. And if you're out doing a bunch of invasives, maybe an hour, 2 hours. Maybe I went to an area and I was just doing a quick search for a forest pest and I spent 10 minutes. Sometimes that information is useful. You're welcome to put it in there. Sometimes people collect that for volunteer hours so they can document, right? There's a lot of different reasons for that. If I knew you were there for a minute, maybe that wasn't a thorough search. If you're there for 3 hours, I can say with a greater confidence, wow, these guys worked really hard trying to find stuff. They didn't find anything. Or they spent 3 hours and they found 5 stems. Okay, they were thorough. Right, let's go get there, those 5 stems and remove them. Also, I will put some other things in. Now, I need to apologize. See here. This is there's something missing in here. So this part here, I need to correct that. You guys should have underneath time search size of area containing invasive. There's a little arrow right there. Go ahead and click it. What shows up? Up to 10 square feet, up to a half an acre, up to an acre, more than an acre. Well, the picture of my mouse is it's definitely less than 10 square feet, so I'm going to click that. So now I have up to 10 square feet. That's the size of the infestation. That tells me that's manageable. I can go and knock that out. If it was 500 acres, I'd be a little bit scared. That's a lot of mouse running around. All right, next is distribution. If you click the arrow, it will say trace, sparse, dense, monoculture, or linearly scattered. If I was along a trail or a road and it was only growing in the ditch or along the trail, I might say linear. If I was out in the field and I saw 2 stems of mile a minute, I would say trace. If I had a clump here, 20 feet away, I had another, like maybe 1 plant. If I had a, maybe 10 over here, over an acre, I would say sparse. Dense is like you're really starting to see it. Monoculture, there's nothing else. So for this example, I have 1 mouse, so I'm going to say trace. I'm going to click on trace. Okay. You should be almost done. You have observational comments. I will put notes. I found hemlock woolly adelgid in the stand of trees next to the Sunshine Trail, next to the old rusted out car. Things like that. Or it's a half mile in from the last trail junction. I sometimes give landmarks or descriptions of what I'm seeing. So if you're all set, you folks should be able to hit save. Go ahead and hit save. Any questions? This may not be exactly the same thing that you're seeing, but on your phone, you'll have in the middle of the screen, add observation. You'll see now that there's a yellow bar, and mine has a picture of my mouse on the left. It's being covered up by the preferences, okay? Private property is an issue. There's a question in the box. You have to ask permission. On your property, it's fine. On public lands and forests, it's fine. Columbia Land Conservancy, you're here with this training, they want you to report it. That's fine. If you go on to somebody's property and it's residential and they have hogweed and you put it, that's private property. You didn't ask for their permission. Don't do it. Alongside the road, you're in the right of way, which is fine. Okay? In the right of way, you're fine. It's typically 33 feet from the center line of a road. Not always towns and villages are different, but you're fine. Street trees, go for it. Don't do it on personal private property. That's not yours. But good question. All right, so a couple of things. This little pencil thing right here, if you were to hit that, and don't do it, if you were to hit that, it opens up the screen again. Yeah, I know some of you did it. If you hit the pencil thing, it opens up the screen. You can make changes. You can edit it, but you have to hit save. You're more than welcome to hit the pencil, open it up, scroll through, check your settings, go back and hit save. You should then have the screen will be back, okay? Next, so I want to report this. You need to check the box. Would you put a little check box in there? And thank you for shaking your head. That lets me know you're engaged and that you're following along and I'm not crazy. And I'm talking to a bunch of names on a screen. I do appreciate you guys giving me a little heads up. All right. Now the next part, we're going to actually go to the hamburger. There's a couple things you could select all, upload, select it. Word of advice, don't do this in the field. Once you have the yellow bars, I might have 30 or 40 of these in my phone. I don't upload them until I get to connectivity, because it might it needs connectivity to upload them. And if you have one bar on your phone, it might freeze your phone up, just the app, but not your actual use of your phone. Do it at home, do it in the office. Do it where you have really good reception, more than 3 bars. On Wi-Fi is best. So you select the check mark, and then what you're going to do is upload select. Go ahead and do that. I hit the checkbox. I'm going to the hamburger, upload selected. Not connected to Wi-Fi. You're about to upload the selected record using your, yep, I'm going to say yes, go ahead and do it. Are you sure you want to upload it? Yes. Believe it or not, the Nature Serve has been sued for not notifying people they're using cellular service. It happens. That's why you get that message. It says, please wait uploading. I'm not on Wi-Fi. I've got 1 bar on my work phone. I made a critical mistake. It's just the wheel of death is spinning. So I should have done that with the Wi-Fi connected. All right, let's finalize tonight. A couple of loose ends. Pictures. This is a common problem, is we do have people reporting, which is really nice. The pictures, though, we get a lot of blurry pictures. I'm going to ask that you try to focus that when you take the picture, look at it. You know, do you have a non-blurry picture? Are you trying to hone in on really high quality identification characteristics? Not everybody's going to know it. The picture on the left is okay. There's a lot of yellow flowers, but they're really far behind, and I can't see the anthers, filament, you know, the reproductive organs, and, you know, the buds. There's leaves, but there's like 5 or 6 different plants. I see mugwort, I see leafy spurge. I don't know, there might be some type of ruby. I don't know what those leaves go to. It's too much of a general. On the far right, this is zoomed in, which is not bad. You can see the flowers and some of the reproductive organs, but there's nothing in the picture there like a ruler to show me how long this leaf is in the background. It would be nice if this picture was used with like a pen cap, or at least my pinky, to show the size of that leaf, because I can't tell. Are these flowers, you know, 5 feet in diameter? Are they 1 centimeter in diameter? Are they an inch? I don't know, because there's nothing to scale. This picture's okay. I've got a pen, I've got my hand, I can see the flowers, I can see the leaf, but I don't have a close-up of the flower. So sometimes it's tricky. You got to do the best you can. This middle picture, it has some of the flowers, not too clear, some blurry ones on the bottom. I did get a characteristic there. This is basically latex of this leafy spurge, which is an identification feature. It's an irritant. It is sticky like glue. So that's a good ID feature. But again, try to do your best. Take a look at these pictures. This is what we get, like a lot. This is a hemlock underside. I think the person's trying to show us hemlock woolly adelgid, which produces a wool coating on the insect that's tiny. You know, I can't tell if that's wool ovisac from insect, or if it's a piece of snow, or if it's spit from a spittle bug, or if it's a spider egg. This is probably it. It's at the base of the needles, but it's all blurry, inconclusive, can't use it. This is probably snow. That looks like a spittle bug. I can't use this. So good pictures are important. All right. So that concludes our iMap mobile training. A little bit difficult with this part at the end of the evening. I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Again, you have my web email address, our website, if you have questions. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And I am going to, let me just close one thing and show. And I want to remember that we saved this recording, and I'm not done yet. Let me see if I can open up. I'm going to share my screen one more time real quick. And I want to show you a resource. Share screen. This is called the Plant Invaders of the Mid-Atlantic Natural Areas Field Guide. This is a new edition. I did put this in the very top of the chat tonight, invasive.org, Mid-Atlantic Field Guide. Look at this. You can download it for free. Like an $18 book. I have copies. I'll share them with the CLC staff next week. You'll get copies of the book. But this is just enough to give you good identification, good recommendations for controls. It's a nice gateway book to get you started. If you decide to manage, look up those resources, contact your PRISM, look up best management practices from accredited institutions. But this is a really, really good book. I highly recommend it. It has aquatics, it has the common terrestrials. If you want to know more about, the tier 2 high threat species, that's when you use the Natural Heritage statewide tier list system. So those are the 2 resources I shared to get you started. Okay. I don't know where all of you. So let me open up the floor for any general questions for a few minutes. I just need a moment to find out where my face went on here. Stop sharing. There it is. All right, thank you. So that was, we're almost on time. I don't know if I went over 6:30 to 7:30. Did I go over, Heidi? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. We had said till 8, but I think it's fine.
So the people that wanted to stayed for the iMap training. I did see people drop off. I did have about 4 or 5 people say they had emergencies tonight for whatever reason. I get that. So it was great. Thank you very much from Betsy. Any questions from the group? Have at it. I'll give you 10 to 15 minutes if you have specific questions. If not, that's okay.
Well, there is one there about for the field portion. Yes, we will have CLC will bring some of our iPads with us, and we can, as you mentioned, break up into groups and share those if people have Android phones. And yep. For other,
and we will,
yeah, go ahead.
We'll provide some tablets, and so hopefully that'll be. I will not be present on the 17th, just so you know. I can't. I have an engagement thing to work on. I'm basically in Geneva, and then I'm up in Plattsburgh all in one day. It's too much. But Sam Schultz, our terrestrial coordinator, she's a plant scientist from Cornell, will be present. And depending on the number, Addison Kubik, our outreach educator, who is a ESF forester, will also be present. Heidi, you and Tim, you'll have us for the Tuesday training for staff, which would be nice. I can't wait to get out. All right, other questions from the group?
Yeah, I'm curious about using iMap invasives. Is there value to reporting things along a roadside or on your own personal property? Where do you get the most bang for your buck, I guess, to helping?
Good question. So as you become more of a scholar with identifying plants, I just love doing botany all the time. I can never stop learning, but you're going to learn the common roadside invaders. Common reed, Japanese knotweed, right? Purple loosestrife. You see them over and over again. It's not necessary. However, if you find a high threat species, there's one called hogweed. If you don't know what it is, look it up. Do not touch the plants. Hogweed is one that will get an alert. We actually work with the DEC hogweed team, and we go and remove the plants. They cause massive burns. I mean, massive chemical burns that get on your hand, you touch your eye, you're going blind. Okay. There's over 1,000 sites in the Finger Lakes. We have 28 locations that we manage in the 11 counties surrounding Albany, and we're going to try and get that less. It is a really bad plant. So yes, report. So report when it's a high threat species. Report it if you know it's like a tier 1 or tier 2 species that just showed up. It could be a bug. Report them. We'd rather have report than not report, because we might miss something. the word of caution there is, you don't want to spend hundreds of hours of your personal time uploading purple loosestrife, so it takes a little time to learn the species. We have some lists in our office that show like the common 10 high threat species for forest pests. We have the high threat species for aquatics and terrestrial. We can always share them with Heidi or people if they email us, we send them. And those are like the rare species that are approaching the area if you want to focus on them. But if you're on a property, like I'm on Columbia Land Conservancy and I see some of these new species showing up, even though they're widespread, I'm going to report them. I want them to know so they can go up and them. It's not the answer, but it helps. It definitely helps, okay?
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I see, Joanne, your question. Yes, we'll team you up with somebody that's really good. It's nice to work. I like the pair share. It's nice to have somebody show you by doing. And I know that this format is not for everyone. Again, I go with the rule of thirds. A third of the people got it instantly. 1/3 had to go through this. The other third, they got some background on it. Let's reinforce it out in the field and have some fun, Joanne, okay? Yes, we'll help you out. Other questions? Invasive insects, I don't know. I like doing the insects a lot. I report them. It's what I spend like 99% of my time is the forests are really important, for economics, but also for ecological connectivity, for habitat, carbon sinks. I'm all about the forest pests. That's really important. They spread fast. They spread through firewood. Some of them can fly. They're the ones that are the most important, in my opinion. This is an estuary bagger tick. There's 5 populations in the United States. This is an area that we manage on the Hudson River and estuary zone. I focus a lot on the terrestrials there. There's common reed being removed around this plant. So, we're protecting that like there's no tomorrow, collecting the seeds for a seed bank, that kind of stuff. So there are other times like for rare and endangered species, I want to protect them. So I'm reporting them, but yeah, I love bugs. Sorry. And we release biocontrol bugs, which is exciting. So yeah, bugs are cool. What else? Luke, Heidi, or Tim, have any final questions or thoughts for the group?
Well, actually, I just wanted to give Luke, Burt, my colleague, an opportunity. So they're our volunteer coordinators, part of their position here at CLC, and we're both really excited about this opportunity to work with you and to get volunteers excited and out on the land. So I just figured give Luke an opportunity to say a few things.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christopher, and thanks, Heidi. Like Heidi said, I manage CLC's volunteer program. We just launched our volunteer work days for the summer and fall. So Heidi will put a link in the chat to our volunteer page, and it lists a variety of ways that you can get involved with our organization. And something that sticks out about our program from traditional volunteering is that we offer group work days that train you to work independently so that you can volunteer at your convenience, much like this iMap Invasive app and program, like allows you to do independent reporting and supporting CLC during those moments where you're like going out and hiking on your own, and linking up for a work day doesn't always, work for everyone's schedule, or last minute things come up. So check it out. You can email me. You can find a lot of info on the volunteer events page and such. And I look forward to meeting some of you here in the next couple months.
Thank you, Luke. Nice to meet you. We look forward to meeting you. Addison Kubik is our outreach volunteer coordinator, and I think you guys could pair up. I'm assuming we'll see you next Tuesday, and I think you're going to get some more ideas. And this is a great way to start initiate a program. And we do some other ones up north in the Adirondacks where we do annual volunteer programs like forest pests or a weed roundup. Like there's some really cool things you can do on an annual traditional basis that once people get comfortable with everything, you just set the program up and let them have at it. So that's awesome. Nice to meet you, Luke. Anything else from the group before we sign off tonight? I want to thank everybody for their extended participation. Heidi, Tim, or Luke, feel free to reach out to me to give any recommendations on tonight's evening program or to tailor it better for your audience. I'm always open for constructive feedback. I'm always trying to make this better for our constituents. So just reach out to me. And everybody has my email from the program. So thank you very much. Thank you. Heidi, I'm going to try and make sure this thing's been saved. It should get downloaded to my Zoom account, and then I have to figure out how to make it and package it so it's a link, and then I'll share the link with you, but I'm not going to do it tonight.
Oops, I'm muted. I'm wondering if do I have to stop the recording because I started it?